controversial performer and a war spy, a sex symbol and a devoted mother.
At the Folie Bergère, the rage is Josephine Baker.
Josephine Baker was an American who captured the French imagination, both to stardom and military honors. This legendary woman made her mark on the world through performance, heroism in wartime, and civil rights activism. St. Louis-born Frida Josephine McDonald dropped out of school at 12 years old. By the age of 15, she had already been married twice. Josephine Baker worked as a domestic servant, but thrived as a performer, dancing her way to New York City and eventually Paris, France. Dr. Monique Wells, owner of Entree to Black Paris, leads tours on Josephine Baker and the African American experience in France.
She came when she was 19.
So a teenager in a new country where she didn't speak the language, but she's got talent.
Exactly. And she had more than talent. She had a charisma. She had what the French would say, that je ne sais quoi. I don't know what, that made her just, you just had to pay attention to her. And she was literally catapulted into stardom overnight.
It was 1925, and Josephine Baker starred in a show at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. The cast was made of entirely Black performers, and the show's name contained a racial slur.
Even though the billing and the images and everything that surrounded this show were everything that African Americans today, and even at that time, would consider pejorative, the freedom that the cast of that show experienced here was like nothing they would ever have dreamed in the United States.
The show stirred up controversy from the beginning, as Ophile Le Show from Théâtre des Champs-Élysées explains.
On va demander à Josephine Baker de retirer son haut.
They asked her to take off her top, to dance half nude, suggested she does a savage dance, something very sensual and smooth, because they wanted to stir up a scandal.
Ça existe déjà cette.
But scandal paved the way to stardom. Josephine left that show to star at the legendary Folies Bergère, and her beauty led to a cosmetics line created by a savvy talent manager.
He launched a series of cosmetics called Baker Fix because the white French women wanted to be like Josephine. She was wearing her hair all slicked down. He started to market his hair pomade so that white women could slick their hair down like Josephine, and they wanted to be dark like her. She's trying to be light, okay? But they wanted to be dark like her.
Josephine Baker became one of the most successful performers in France, but never reached that level of fame in her home country. This could partly be due to the fact that during her few visits to the U.S., she refused to follow the Jim Crow era rules.
She refused to perform in front of segregated audiences, and she made quite a stir with that.
She was part of a whole generation of people who moved to France. Now, it does not mean that racism did not exist in France, but the French racism has often been more subtle, not as brutal as the American forms of racism.
Through marriage, Josephine Baker obtained French citizenship, renouncing her American passport.
So we are talking about a woman who grew, politically speaking, while in France.
Josephine Baker performed on stage and in film during the 1920s and 30s, but her life changed when France entered World War II in 1939. When the Nazis invaded, Baker fled Paris to her home in the south of France. Josephine Baker was the epitome of everything Hitler hated. She was a rich Black woman in an interracial marriage with a Jewish French man. But her celebrity made her ideal for the covert French resistance during World War II. Initially, Baker passed along intelligence she charmed out of high-ranking individuals. She smuggled notes across Europe written on her sheet music and even penned top-secret information to her underwear. As a star performer, she knew she would not be strip-searched.
She not only risked her life to smuggle information and to listen in on conversations and report information on the enemy, she also perform to raise money for the war effort. And she returned to Paris a hero.
For her service, General Charles de Gaulle gave her several awards, including naming her a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, France's highest order of merit for military and civil action. Baker was a performer and a spy, but in her heart, she was a mother. Unable to have biological children, she adopted 12 kids from around the world, naming her dozen the Rainbow Tribe.
She wanted her family and her life to illustrate that it was possible for people of all races and creeds to live together in harmony.
Something the United States was still struggling with. In 1963, Josephine Baker wore her French uniform and medals to speak before Dr. Martin Luther King at the March on Washington. She told the crowd, "I have walked into palaces of kings and queens, and into the houses of presidents, and much more, but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee."
She had not forgotten the US, and that as French as she was also very much American, never in denial of her roots, never in denial of the plight of her people. Here is this woman proudly wearing a French uniform with medals and saying, "I have never forgotten you, I am with you, and you cannot fail."
Josephine Baker was once a wealthy woman, but mismanagement and overgenerosity led to bankruptcy and losing her home. She kept performing to support her family. And in 1975, in the midst of performing in a show financed by Princess Grace of Monaco, Baker had a cerebral hemorrhage and died. She was 68 years old. Her funeral reportedly attracted over 20,000 mourners, lining the streets of Paris to pay their respects, but it wouldn't be for the final time. In 2021, Josephine Baker became the first Black woman to be honored at the Pantheon, a monument where the remains of France's national heroes are interred.
The fact that a Black woman born in the United States who fought for the human rights, who fought fascism at the cost of her own physical life sometimes, is something that is good news in current day France.
A casket carrying soil from St. Louis, Missouri, Paris, and Monaco was carried in by military officers, while pictures and video were projected on the Pantheon walls. This soil, symbolizing the significant places in Josephine Baker's life, was requested by her children in order to leave Baker's remains where she was originally laid to rest.
Josephine Baker mena.
French President Emmanuel Macron called Josephine Baker a war hero, fighter, dancer, singer, a Black woman defending Black people, but first of all, a woman defending humankind, American and French. Josephine Baker fought so many battles with lightness, freedom, and joy.
Josephine will be most remembered for her unshakable belief in the brotherhood of humankind.
For Inside Edition Digital, I'm TC Newman.